Sometimes the most unsettling stories aren't about monsters or crimes. They're about the people we trust, the ones we share a bed with, the ones we go on dates with, the ones who look completely normal until one sentence, one secret, or one discovery changes everything. Today's stories are about hidden lives, uncomfortable truths, and the moment you realize that what you believed was real never actually was. These are true Reddit stories. Story 1. My husband wasn't going to lodge, he was living a double life. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would question where her husband goes at night. For years, I didn't. I trusted him. My husband told me he was a Freemason. He'd been one for about 6 years, and honestly, that never bothered me. My grandfather was a Freemason too. I grew up around that world. I never bought into the conspiracy theories, never thought it was creepy or secretive. To me, it was just a social organization with rituals and old traditions. At first, it seemed harmless. He went to lodge meetings, he talked about personal growth, brotherhood, discipline. I supported him. I encouraged him. I told myself this was good for him. But slowly, something started to feel off. My grandfather used to say that for him, it was family first, then work, then masonry. With my husband, it was masonry, then more masonry, then maybe family, and work somewhere at the very bottom. He was gone almost every night, not once or twice a week, nearly every night. Some nights he was gone for hours. Other nights he'd be back in under an hour. When I asked what he was doing, he'd get defensive and say he couldn't tell me because of secrecy. I understood there were ceremonies I wasn't supposed to know about, but I couldn't wrap my head around how secrecy justified disappearing daily. Even when he came home early, he wouldn't come to bed. He'd go straight to his man cave and do admin work for the lodge. Unpaid, endless, and expensive. The dues alone were draining money, and I had no idea what we were getting back from it. I tried to be patient. I tried to be the understanding wife. I told myself I didn't want to be controlling. I told myself this was just a phase. But then it started affecting everything. There were weeks when he barely took care of himself. He'd go days without shaving. Sometimes he wouldn't change his clothes. There were times he went to work without showering or called in late claiming urgent lodge business. His boss let it slide because he was weirdly impressed by the whole Mason thing. Our marriage faded into the background. We didn't go on dates, we didn't talk, our bedroom had been dead for over a year. I told myself my libido was low, that it wasn't a big deal, but deep down, I knew it was another sign of how far apart we'd drifted. Eventually, I emailed the head of his lodge. I didn't accuse anyone, I just said I was worried about my husband. When the reply came, my stomach dropped. He apologized for the delay and told me, very politely, that my husband had not been a member of that lodge for at least 5 years. He'd left less than a year after joining. Apparently, he'd had repeated issues with leadership and had been cautioned for soliciting other members. Soliciting. They checked other lodges in the area. No records, no transfers, nothing. That was the moment I realized something was deeply wrong. About a week later, a senior lodge member named David offered to come over and talk to my husband with me. He vaguely remembered my husband being removed, but couldn't remember why. We hoped maybe confronting him together would force the truth out. When David arrived, my husband wasn't home. Typical. Halfway through our conversation, my husband walked in and immediately said he was tired from lodge and didn't want to talk. David introduced himself anyway. My husband ignored him, went into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of milk, and started scrolling on his phone. It was surreal. We followed him into the living room. David calmly told him he knew he wasn't attending lodge because David had been a senior member when my husband left. My husband laughed, an uncomfortable, forced laugh. He said it wasn't a crime to switch lodges. David told him none of the local lodges had him on record. My husband flushed red and accused David of being racist, claiming he'd switched to a different organization entirely. David shut that down too. He'd already checked. That's when I finally asked the question everyone online had been asking me. Is it drugs? He said no. Then he paused. Then he said there was something he needed to show us and that it was in his car. In the trunk, he pulled out a black sports bag. I didn't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that. Inside were latex masks, a nearly lifelike horse head, leather harnesses, an entire suit. Everything about it felt unreal, like my brain couldn't catch up to what my eyes were seeing. Back inside, in complete silence, he finally explained. He told us he was into something called pony play, that he'd fallen down a rabbit hole years ago. He said he struggled with submissive urges and same-sex attraction for most of his life, but insisted he was still 100% straight. He said he joined Freemasonry hoping it would fix him, that being around older men would somehow make it go away. It didn't. Instead, he started soliciting lodge members, first emotionally, then sexually. When that failed, he found the fetish community, escorts at first, then professional dominance, then online ones. He talked about financial domination like it was a hobby. He said none of it was cheating. He said he wasn't in control. He said he was hypnotized. He said sometimes he would mentally shift into a pony persona named Sparkles and couldn't stop himself. I don't think I've ever felt so numb in my life. When David said, "So you've been having an affair and using the lodge as cover," my husband exploded. He insisted it wasn't an affair, that it didn't count, that it was my fault for never suggesting this lifestyle or creating a safe space for him. That was it. I packed a bag. David drove me to my parents' house. I told my husband I'd be filing for divorce. He's still in denial, but the marriage is over. He chose secrecy, fantasy, and lies over me, over us. For the first time in years, I'm sleeping without waiting for someone who isn't coming home. And that's where I am now. Taking time off work, staying with my parents, no contact, and finally breathing again. Some secrets don't just end relationships, they end illusions. And honestly, I'm done living in one.
Story 2. I left my Bumble date at the restaurant. I didn't expect much when I downloaded Bumble. I wasn't desperate, just open to meeting someone new. Then I matched with Anna. From the start, things felt easy. We FaceTimed a lot. She was funny, warm, and seemed emotionally aware in a way that's honestly rare. Our conversations flowed. Nothing felt forced. I remember thinking, wow, this might actually be something. So when we decided to meet in person, I wanted to do it right. I picked a nice restaurant, kind of expensive, kind of far, but I wanted to treat her. I offered to pick her up and drive. She asked if, after the date, I could drop her off at her best friend's place because she had a movie night planned. At the time, I didn't think much of it. The date itself went even better than I hoped. We laughed a lot, we talked about our lives, our values, what we were looking for. She had a few drinks since I was driving, and the whole night just felt promising. Then, right at the end, as we were wrapping things up, she casually said, "So you can just drop me off at Josh's place after this." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. I asked who Josh was. She paused for a half second, just long enough to make the air feel different, and said he was her guy best friend. She realized immediately how that sounded and apologized, saying she just wanted to be honest because she really liked me and saw potential with us. Then she added something I wasn't ready for. She told me that during these movie nights, they sometimes make out. She said it never goes further than that. She said it wasn't serious. She said it like she was telling me she prefers oat milk over regular milk. I remember feeling this cold drop in my chest, like all the excitement from the night just drained out of me at once. I appreciated her honesty, I really did. But in that moment, all I could think was, you want me to take you on a fancy date and then drive you to the guy you hook up with? I sat there for a few seconds, trying to decide if I was overreacting, trying to tell myself this was just modern dating and I was being insecure. But something in me snapped into clarity. I told her she should ask Josh to pick her up instead. I paid for my portion of the meal, stood up, and left. The look on her face stuck with me. She looked genuinely sad, not angry, not defensive, just hurt. Later that night, the guilt crept in. I called my sister and told her what happened. She said Anna had been honest and kind, and that leaving her at the restaurant might have been harsh, but I couldn't shake the feeling that staying would have meant betraying myself. The next day, Anna texted me, a few times. I didn't respond right away. When I finally opened the messages, I was surprised. She wasn't angry, she apologized again. She said after I left, she took an Uber home and didn't go to Josh's. She said she'd be willing to stop seeing him entirely if it meant we could continue. I told her she didn't owe me an apology, and that I was the one who should have paid for her meal since I invited her out. I asked for her Venmo. She refused the money. She just asked if we could keep seeing each other. And that's when I realized something uncomfortable. Even though she'd done everything right afterward, my feelings were gone. I told her honestly that I didn't think we were compatible and that it was best to end things there. We talked a bit more. She was respectful. She admitted she was sad. I admitted it sucked. And that was it. I don't think anyone was evil in this story. I don't think she was trying to manipulate me. But timing matters, boundaries matter, and sometimes honesty alone isn't enough if it comes at the wrong moment. That date taught me something important. You don't owe anyone access to you, especially not at the cost of your self-respect. It's strange how clarity often comes after everything falls apart. Not in a dramatic, movie-like way, but quietly, when you finally stop making excuses for someone else. Some people reveal who they are through betrayal, others through honesty that comes too late. And sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do isn't to forgive or fight, it's simply to walk away. If you stayed until the end, thank you for listening. And if any of these stories hit closer to home than you expected, you're not alone. This was Reddit Echoes,